I was 17 years old. I lived with my mother, who had been depressed since my father had passed away a few years earlier. We weren't really talking to each other. I felt lonely and depressed. My only sister had left home to start her adult life. One day, I decided to end my suffering and swallowed all the boxes of medications my mother had accumulated to treat her depression. I fell asleep very quickly, sinking into a heavy sleep. At one point, I had a nightmare where I was alone in space. I was floating in an absolutely black void and the loneliness was agonizing. It was the worst feeling of loneliness I have ever felt. I felt like it was real. I thought I needed someone, that I couldn't stay alone for all eternity. Then a friend's face appeared in a corner of that space and the nightmare stopped. I woke up due to a strong, unpleasant and disturbing vibration in my head. But it suddenly stopped. Then I opened my eyes and found that I was stuck in front of the top of my wardrobe that is located in the corner of my bedroom. It was daytime. At that moment, I was sure I was awake. But I did not understand why my eyes were in front of the top of the wardrobe, around 6 feet above the floor. I sometimes wore glasses with little correction. Here, my vision was very precise. I could see much more detail, such as in the wallpaper and the wardrobe than previously. It seemed very real to me though, since I was in the room where I had fallen asleep. Then I saw myself in my bed, but I reacted almost as if it was someone else. I didn't panic, but I didn't understand. I briefly entertained the idea that I might be dead, but that was all. I didn't pay much attention to it. At that time and until a short time ago, I was convinced that the soul did not exist. I thought that there was only the brain that created thoughts, and that the degradation of the body would annihilate those thoughts. However, it was obvious to me that I was not dead. I didn't think I was dreaming either, because everything seemed very real. I sometimes had lucid dreams during which I knew I was dreaming, but here, this was not the case. I quickly understood that I was floating and that I could move around like in a dream. I found the experience was magical. I thought of my sister, thinking I would like to show this to her because otherwise, she wouldn't believe me. She was supposed to be in her apartment that weekend. Yet, I found myself in front of the door of the room she occupied when she still visited at home. The door was slightly ajar, not enough to be able to enter without pushing it. I passed through it without touching the door. I think that's when I realized I didn't have a body. And then, to my surprise, my sister was at her desk working. I waved to her. I called her by her first name, but she didn't look up. I was in front of her, with my eyes still 6 feet from the ground. She didn't seem to hear me. I told myself that she was doing it on purpose, and that it annoyed me. The idea that I might be invisible started to creep in my mind. I was starting to realize that she really couldn't see and hear me. A black hole opened in her room, in the air. I didn't quite trust it. Then it changed its appearance and became luminous. This reassured me, so I got closer. I then arrived in a dark cave, about 7 to 10 feet wide and 7 feet high. I floated without thinking to the front of this cave. On the walls, there were thousands of sepia-colored photos of people I didn't recognize. When I approached, I saw that some of the photos were transparent tiles, behind which, the faces of people from another world approached to chat with each other, or just watch what was happening in that tunnel. I did not recognize those faces except for one. It was my father. He didn't look happy to find me there, and he seemed to be struggling to get close. It looked like something was holding him back. I worried about him. I kept moving forward anyway. Then I heard a firm "no" in an unfamiliar male voice behind me. I still continued forward, and then I heard that voice repeat, but more authoritatively, "Stop." It seemed to me that the person speaking to me hesitated whether to address me in English or French. I don't know why I had this feeling. I am French and at the time my only English was whatever I had learned at school. At this point, the experience stopped and I came back to my body. I woke up and felt bad. I inspected the top of the wardrobe. I wondered how I could have found myself there. I went to my sister's room and she was there. She had decided to spend the day there and had arrived in the morning. I asked her why she did not react earlier when I had called her and when I was in front of her. She answered that she was alone. I insisted I had been there. She told me that I had dreamed it. She looked rather exasperated that I didn't believe it was just a dream. I stopped talking to her, telling myself, I know I wasn't dreaming. I understood that she didn't believe me because the experience sounded so crazy. I wouldn't have believed her myself if she had told me that. Later that day I told her that I was worried about our daddy because I had seen him in that dream and he didn't seem well. Of course, she told me it was just a dream. I felt that talking about him could help improve his situation.